All right, we are live. That little live icon just popped up. Welcome, everybody. I know there'll be a few people joining us for the live broadcast, and a number of people will hopefully be watching the recording afterwards. I have a great set of panelists with me today. We're going to be talking about the balancing act of work and life. Sounds difficult. It is. We know it. We all live it every day. As for introductions, I am Paul Leahy. I am the immediate past chair of the Young Professionals Committee with ASAE. I'm the Associate Director of Governance and Component Relations at the American Immigration Lawyers Association. If you're wondering, yes, it was a crazy night last night for us. I am drinking, if you can see this, Tropicana from Heavy Seas Brewery. It's a citrus IPA. It's a little fruitier than I was expecting, but it's from a semi-local brewery up near Baltimore that I really like. And yeah, so I'm drinking and having a good time. I'm gonna hand it over. Let's hear from our panelists. Let me know what you're drinking and what you're currently balancing at the moment. Let's start with Caitlin. What are you drinking? What are you balancing?
So I'm Caitlin Couture. I'm the Director of Governance and Engagement at the Society for Interventional Radiology. Unfortunately, I'm just drinking tea right now. I am currently at home on maternity leave with my second child, who is almost 4 weeks old. So that is what I'm currently balancing.
Oh, that's great. How about you, Natasha? Why don't you tell us what you're drinking and what you're balancing?
Hi, everybody. My name is Natasha Bethia. I'm the Senior Manager of Membership Recruitment and Retention at the Association for Psychological Science. I'm also a member of the Young Professionals Committee. I'm drinking right now 2017 Rosé. It's actually very warm. It's not cool. So that's interesting. But right now I'm balancing work and the membership role. Right now is renewal season, so it's crazy time. One of my colleagues is about to go on maternity leave, so we're getting prepared for that. I'm balancing grad school. I have a fiance. We're planning a wedding. I have a puppy. And there's all the other activities and volunteer commitments I have. So I'm pretty busy.
Yeah, sounds like it. Christina, how about you?
Hi, this is Christina McCoy. I am an account exec with AMPT Association Management. I am currently drinking water out of a festive holiday mug because it's 4 o'clock Central Time here, and I'm in the office because I couldn't get home in time to take this call from home. And the festive mug is because in Wisconsin, where I work, we are expecting snow in the next couple days. So it seemed appropriate. Cheers to everybody. I am currently balancing, like in my short term here, I was on vacation the last couple days, came back to the office, and when I got back, I was pleasantly surprised to learn that I have a new office with a great view, but all of my stuff is moved, and I'm trying to figure out where everything is. And in catching up from vacation, planning for, I've got a conference coming up, and I've got 2 small kids at home are looking for my attention in a growing list of work that has to be prioritized.
Wow. Did I hear that right? They moved you without telling you while you were on vacation?
I got the email while I was on vacation that I would be moved and that the movers would be showing up on Monday to move my stuff to the new location. And I said, thanks, I won't be there. See you then.
Wow. I hope they didn't damage any of your Brewers bobbleheads.
No, I'm good.
And last and almost certainly not least, Danny, what are you drinking and what are you balancing right now?
So hi, it's Danny Grayson. I'm an administrator on the education team at the American Society of Clinical Oncology. I am balancing with work life. We are planning the ASCO annual meeting and launching the abstract submitter next week. So a lot of irons in the fire there, as well as potentially starting a side business with my wife. So launching, an LLC and kind of navigating all of that. Having an hyperactive puppy to kind of take care of, requiring a lot more attention than we originally thought when we got her, but we still love her. Not to mention the family obligations and kind of the anticipatory stress of the upcoming holidays. So Plenty of things going on. I'm currently drinking a brown ale that I actually brewed myself. My wife and I are home brewers. So this is a brown ale that's a little chocolatey, medium-bodied, pretty good. So one of our things that we like to do when we're not working.
Yeah. Excellent. Cheers to my panelists. Thank you for joining us today. So when we originally had our first conversations, we kind of threw out some ideas and coalesced around a couple of different like major themes that we thought was really, really behind balancing work and life. And that's time management, setting and communicating expectations, developing peace of mind in a sometimes very insane work and home and life environment, and then learning and growing and using resources to better yourself as people. So Christina, we talked a lot about time management. Can you share some tips with us about, you know, how you make time for major non-work priorities and how you balance that and what kind of factors into your decisions to allocate time?
Sure. Thanks, Paul. So I have this, I have this theory is a theory that I've borrowed from, there's a blog that I follow where I found this, where if you think of your time and you visualize it to help you kind of prioritize and make good decisions about spending your time wisely. So for those of you who are on the YouTube Live now, or for those of you who are watching the recording, I encourage you to grab a piece of paper here. Just grab a piece of paper and make 4 quadrants. And in each of those quadrants, I want you to write one thing. So the first one would say family, quadrant 2 would say friends, the third quadrant would say health, and the fourth one would say career. And this visualization is helpful to tell you about what's called this 4 burners theory, which is how you allocate your time and energy. So what this means is you've now written down those 4 things: family, friends, health, and career. Now visualize that those are the 4 burners on a stove. Okay, for those of us who like analogies, pretend that you're cooking dinner and you have your stove on. Now, generally, it's advised that when you're cooking, you don't have all 4 burners turned on high, requiring your most immediate attention always. And this is to be applied as well in your life. So if you want to be successful in these 4 quadrants in general, it's advised that you don't have all 4 of them on high all the time, because it's just impossible to be everywhere to everybody all the time. So what's recommended is if you want to focus intently on something, that's the burner you turn high. So for example, there may be a time in your life when maybe you're preparing for the CAE exam with ASAE, and that career burner is turned way up high, and perhaps the other 3 are turned down or completely off. The thought is to focus where your energy is rather than to have everything on high, or moderately level that energy. So maybe everything's on a moderate low, or maybe one thing's turned high and another one's turned on medium, the others are off. So that 4 burners theory is really a visualization for how you're spending your energy. Nobody's a superhero. Let's just put that out there and give yourself permission to focus on something, but also not focus on others. And that's kind of a difficult self-realization sometimes, is you might want to do everything, but just it's impossible to do sometimes. So that's the visualization. To kind of get back to your questions, they asked, how do I make time for these things? So I'm very intentional about what I do. So things like having personal time. My husband and I, we have 2 kids. They're young, 1.5 and 3 years old. And we both value, time together as a family, but also time alone as individual human beings that are adults. And so what we have done is we have this agreement, my husband and I, that we each get 1 night a week that's like our night to just be gone and do whatever. So on Tuesdays, my husband plays volleyball after dinner and is just gone for 3 hours, which is great. And then I get Thursdays, and I can, sometimes that's me working later. Sometimes it's me going to the library and literally reading a book. So just thinking about how to capitalize on the time that you do have, and setting those expectations with those that are really involved in the important parts of your life that you can change. Other suggestions I have are, think about the little moments of time that aren't being maximized. So and this is common, but think about your commute. If you have a long commute, is there something you can be doing? Maybe educating yourself with a podcast or taking a call that you don't have to be, you know, actively typing or something during. I advocate for safe driving practices. Maybe there's a way that you can, you know, work from home some of the time so you don't have that commute. Maybe there's other ways that you can be working with your office to understand how other people are allocating their time to be most efficient. So at a high level, visualize the time that you do have and think about what is important for you, and then spend your time doing that.
So you're telling me you use your one free night a week to work or go to the library? I heard that. Right?
As I drink my water. Yes, I am, and I'm not kidding, because sadly right now, sadly is not the right word, but I will admit there's some busy things with I'm the executive director for the Fantasy Sports Trade Association, and there's some really big legislative things coming up, and this has required a lot of extra work time, and I don't feel like it's fair on my family to constantly work from home. So if I can dedicate some time that night, and then I get to reward myself, because reading's a priority for me too, and the library is quiet. It's the only quiet place in my life.
That's fair. I was only mildly giving you a hard time. So
can I jump in here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Another thing, just piggybacking off of what Christina said, you have to be intentional about scheduling that time, but you have to be intentional about taking that time as well. So a lot of times we treat work like, you know, work is so important, and if I don't go to this meeting, I'm going to get fired. But you have to treat those personal things you do in your life the same way. So I try to make dinner with my fiance a priority. Like, it has to happen. It's a meeting that I can't miss. I try to make working out every day a priority. That's a meeting I can't miss. So, you know, you have to have that same importance that you take with your job, with your personal life as well. So sometimes we like to plan these things, but we actually don't do it because we get so busy. But keep it as a meeting that you just can't miss.
Quick question from the group. Show of hands, who here puts personal meetings and appointments like dinner date with your significant other in your work calendar? No, just me. I'm the only.
Why don't it happen during the workday? They don't go to my work calendar.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. So let's hear from others. Caitlin, do you have a couple of tips to share on time management?
Yeah, I think you have to figure out what works for you. I know for a long time, I would read like blog posts, listen to podcasts, and everyone has recommendations on what you should be doing to maximize your time. But I really think it's really self-reflective. So I don't think there's really necessarily an answer. I think stepping back and evaluating how you should be spending your time and how you currently are spending your time, and really reflecting on what your time sucks are. One of the activities I did once recently was I went through and like literally wrote down every hour of like a sample day, and really just like looked at what my day actually looked like, and then like did it again of what I wanted my day to look at like, and really then analyzed, okay, what are the things that I can change and what are the things I can't? Like I can't change daycare drop off. But I can't change sometimes evening conference calls. But what I can change is making sure I get out of work at a certain time, and making sure I have that time between my conference calls at night, so I can kind of prioritize the things I need to do personally before I kind of have to get on a call in the evening. So I think that taking inventory of your day, and then really looking at what are the negotiables, what can change, what can't change, and then adjusting and prioritizing accordingly. And that will change. I think you have to do that often, and kind of continue to evaluate your day and what your time sucks are.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And maybe for some of the folks who are watching this or will watch this later and don't have kids, daycares usually charge you if you're late, if you come after they close. So there's like so you have like the guilt of being late and having your kids sit there screaming for mom and dad, but then they'll actually charge you like a couple bucks a minute extra to hold them, which I think is kind of funny. But in any case, that's neither here nor there. Danny, what are some time management tips that you have to share with the group?
So kind of piggybacking on Caitlin, I think that one of the best things you can do is kind of like realize what is within your control and what is not within your control and your daily responses and daily workload, and trying to basically maximize the time that you spend on things that are important but not urgent, while instead of just being bogged down with everything that is urgent, whether it's important or not. So doing things that so I took a class once, and somebody kind of said this thing out loud, and I was like, it was like a light bulb went off in my head that, oh, I can do this, and that was blocking off time on my calendar and just saying, okay, I'm not going to look at any incoming emails that are coming in for an hour. If I'm getting 20 emails an hour, that's untenable for me to kind of keep moving away from the project that I'm working on and responding to those. So just doing small things like that, and kind of forcing yourself to be rigid in that decision. Like, okay, I'm just going to step back from that and stop addressing those kind of niggling things that come in that you don't really have control of, and really try and focus on and be productive in those areas of project management that are really important, but that you find yourself kicking to the back burner. And that'll not only will it let you be productive, but it'll also make you feel better. It feels like you're accomplishing something. Answering 20 emails and spending 2 hours doing that, I feel like I'm just spinning tires.
Yeah, Danny, if I can just kind of circle back around here, you said something that reminded me of kind of the whole purpose of this is kind of that tie between your time, how you're spending it, and like the happiness you have around that. And I myself, I use that burners theory because I found myself really frustrated at a time where I was spinning my wheels doing things that just didn't feel meaningful and impactful. And so I assessed, just like Caitlin said, assessed my time in the way that made sense, and realized where I was spending my time and why that wasn't feeling, I wasn't happy with that. And you have to allocate. And sometimes that intentional time of, turning off email or turning off notifications might even be as much as just single tasking on something, which is difficult to do. But when you do it effectively, you can really maximize your time.
Yeah, I think it's important to find those, like you said, doing things that make you happy, like find those pockets of joy that you can then kind of fall into. Like, if music is always something that's been really important in my life. So if I'm doing work where I can kind of be on autopilot a little bit, then I'll plug in some headphones, and that makes the day go by, makes me be productive, but also kind of relieve some stress and things like that. And finding those areas where you can flex and combine your work with your happiness is I think crucial.
Yeah, I love it. Great stuff. I've heard only check your email twice a day, turn off all notifications, sit down at least once a day and plan out your day, possibly multiple days at a time, and definitely schedule very important things like both work and social life things, and also block off time when you're working on like a big project and you don't want people to bug you. Just put it in your calendar, right? Does anybody have shared calendars where everybody can see in your office can see what you do? Yeah. So I have to put out time and say, don't schedule me in a meeting for these 2 hours because I'm working on this program and it's due to our executive committee in like 3 days. So don't bother me. So all of this talk is really got my head spinning and making me think that it's seriously time to take a vacation. What I worry about though is when I'm on vacation, how do I even manage being out of the office? How do I truly disconnect? I know that like people are still going to be emailing me and expecting things of me, expecting me to watch. And, now that I'm older and I have a kid, like now I got to like take the kid and like play with him and deal with his schedule. So it feels like it's really hard to let go and just have a good vacation. Danny, can you talk a little bit about your vacation experience and maybe how you set and communicate your expectations like to work and to family and to friends?
Absolutely, because I've definitely been that guy that has been holed up in the bedroom by himself on his work computer while the family's having family dinner or playing games or something. So it's definitely not fun to navigate. But I think instances like that can be mitigated by kind of defining your priorities and communicating that both to your coworkers and your stakeholders, as well as your family too, in advance. And I know that's hard it's hard these days. I know it's hard for me to figure out what I'm doing, how I'm going to plan this weekend, let alone a vacation that's 2 months away or a month away. But it's really important. And I think that kind of goes back to making sure you're allocating time for yourself, because you're essentially, by doing the legwork in advance and, basically communicating that you're going to be out and things, that's, helping your future self to an extent. But basically setting your priorities, working with, people that report to you or the people that you report and say, hey, look, I'm going to be out these days in this coming week. Here are the projects that I have going on. Here's what I expect to be coming in. Here's what you can worry about if it comes in. If something comes in, if this comes in, don't worry about it at all. Communicating that so no one's reaching out directly to you unless it's an emergency is a tremendous help. Additionally, I think that setting expectations and putting in things like contacts, who to contact in your out of office message. Don't just put I'm out of office, I'll be back in a week. I'm out of office. If you're inquiring about X, you can reach out to so and so. If you're inquiring about Y, and reach out to so and so. Those kind of things help leverage your sanity, because you don't come back to a giant mountain of requests and inboxes and things. And then another thing that I've kind of thought about and we subscribe to at my work is kind of like approaching this with the golden rule, so to speak. If I want to take a vacation and I want to be totally unplugged, I need to realize that my colleagues should have that ability as well, and being able to step up and take care of their priorities when they go out of office, and be prepared for them as much as they're going to do for me.
That's a great point. Respecting people's times. Caitlin, what about you? How do you manage your vacations, especially now that you have a couple of extra family members?
I think it's hard. And I think, I know one of the lessons I've learned along the way is, you really have to practice kind of what you preach, and set the expectation of whether you are open to being contacted or not. Not all vacations I go on, I'm completely not available. And I kind of set that expectation up in advance with my supervisor and then with my staff as well, to let them know when if a vacation is, a vacation time is I'm online or when I'm going to be completely offline. I've certainly made the mistake in the past of wanting to get on my email and respond because it's a quick email and I'm just going to respond really quick. But I've also then, it opened myself up for people to start emailing me back and be like, oh, she's online. So now I'm just going to ask her this quick question. So I think you have to, whatever you say you're going to do, you also have to stick with it. If you tell your coworkers you're going to be offline, then truly be offline and allow yourself to get that break that you deserve and you probably worked hard for. Because if you start answering email, people will start emailing you, and then you've kind of ruined your vacation for yourself, and you definitely probably deserve it. So I think setting clear expectations for yourself and giving yourself the opportunity to really disconnect when you need to, I think is appropriate.
Yeah, that's great. And, someone's inevitably going to ruin a vacation. Don't let it be you. Don't let it be yourself. Natasha, what about you? How do you deal with your vacations? How do you disconnect or communicate?
So at first, I really tried to make sure that my team is prepared for me to go on vacation. So whether it's things that need to be wrapped up, I just make sure that they have everything they need to operate while I'm gone. I feel like that's important, and that's a way they won't, try to contact me. And then, like everyone else on the call, just setting the example of, not trying to be contacted, and as a manager doing that, so your team knows that they can do that as well. Also, I would say that you have to change your mindset. I think a lot of times we feel guilty for even taking sick days sometimes. But someone said to me, in the association industry, we're not saving lives here. It can wait till tomorrow. So we're not doctors. Nobody's going to die if something doesn't happen. So just kind of changing your mindset and just getting away with that guilt, so you don't feel bad about taking a vacation. Everybody deserves it. And I think our society makes it, puts so much pressure on us that we feel like we have to be on all the time, but it's okay to unplug. So I think it's mindset and making sure your team is prepared.
That's fantastic. I always feel guilty And the ways that I alleviate the guilt is to make sure, like, okay, I've picked the right day, right? When you got all this leave built up, or you're just like in between projects, and you're like, you know what, I deserve a mental health day, and you take it. And when you know that not a lot is expected of you that day, you can do it guilt free, but you have to want to be guilt free. So thanks for bringing it up. That's just fantastic. What about Christina? What do you think? How do you deal with your vacations?
So this is fresh since I'm literally getting back from vacation last night. And I think it really comes down to a lot of things everyone said here, but also commenting about planning. And it doesn't have to be a all or nothing setup. You could have a situation, like I did recently, where maybe you check email for 15 minutes in the morning and just respond to the things that might be pressing. And then that when you come back to the office, you're not going to have 100 emails from one person or one situation. You can come in with less anxiety to the new day that you're beginning. The planning part for me is a lot about communicating to others and the people that need to know you're out and need to have plans while you're out, but also planning for yourself. Have you canceled appointments that you would have had while you were in the office so people don't have to check in, hey, you're going to make this call? Have you thought about what your day back looks like? Are you going to have 10 meetings? Is that even realistic? Are you, what's the rest of your week look like? And really being reasonable with the expectations that you have. There's any sort of situation, just make sure you're clear to people how you want to be communicated. For me, I tell everybody, call or text me if it's important, but I won't check my email. And so that way, when my phone wasn't ringing or I wasn't getting texts, I knew there's nothing to worry about. And was there some FOMO going on, like missing out, like office chatter and things like that? I mean, kind of, but also I knew that meant I didn't have to think about that, and I could focus on, what was right in front of me, which was my vacation. So find out what works for you.
Yeah, that's great. What works for me was marrying a woman who will throw things at me if I check my email on my phone during vacation, and it's highly effective. So, So I've got back from vacation and stuff's crazy. We got big bills coming up in Congress. I just got a promotion. I've got all these now direct reports. It's crazy. I'm dealing with this new normal. Caitlin, can you talk to us a little bit about how you deal with that new normal that comes with, say, increased responsibility at work, having another animal, be it puppy or baby, in the house, or a major life event that's happened? How do you deal with like that new normal of just going all the time?
Yeah, I think a lot of what we've already hit upon are great tips and tricks to tackle the new normal. I know for me, recently I've caught myself over the past year, every time someone asks me like, how's it going, in the morning when I'm getting coffee or like filling up my water for the day, I just keep on being like, I can't wait for things to slow down. I can't wait for things to slow down, or, in a month after this meeting, things are going to slow down. And I've come to realize one day, I kind of was just like, well, maybe this is my new normal and I have to adjust. And with that, I kind of had to going through and evaluating my day, like I already spoke about. What are some of the things I could adjust and could give a little on to better accommodate what my new normal was, both in the work setting as I kind of advanced within my career, but then also personally as well. I think you have to take into consideration both aspects of kind of continually to evaluate what you're willing to give on and what you are willing to take on. And if you do take on that responsibility, then what the sacrifice is going to be, because there is only so many hours in a day, and we all are only humans. I know for me, one of the things that I kind of is like a signal for me that things are getting too out of hand is just that if I start noticing like small little mistakes, even if it's just like minor typos in emails, I kind of have to talk to myself and like kind of really pull myself back and say like, okay, I'm doing too many things at one time. I'm multitasking too much, because that's kind of my trigger, is when I start multitasking a lot is when I realize that I need to recalibrate and I need to adjust and kind of re-implement either best practices that work for me, or just kind of find new practices that don't work or that will work better. I know for me personally, Some of the things I do is I can't do the email. I can't ignore emails. I just have tried. I can't do the, like, don't look your email every hour. I'm kind of an instant gratification person. So that's something that I will always do. But I will block out time on my calendar for meetings where I will literally get up from my desk and go reserve a conference room because we have an open concept office in our at our office. So you get a lot of foot traffic, I like to say, and you get the oh, can I ask you a quick question? So how I have combated that issue is I'll just literally, like Paul said earlier, is I'll just block off an hour or two of on my calendar so no one can schedule meetings with me. But then I will also physically get up from my desk and go into what we have is like these small huddle conference rooms and actually go in there and shut the door, because sometimes just being at my desk is enough of a distraction where people will come. And that's one way I've kind of helped better manage my time so that as my responsibilities have increased, I'm more effective when I am in the office. So that way, when I leave the office, I know that I feel like I had a complete day. I got everything I needed to done, so I can go and be home with my kids and not feel like, there's things outstanding at work that are weighing on me. So,
yeah, I love that you go find a conference room and just like duck out and hide from your coworkers. For me, that's telecommuting. Like a couple of days a week, you're just like, hey, I'm working, don't bother me.
Telecommuting days are definitely a day I love because you don't have that, there's not people stopping by your house. Hopefully, every once in a while you get someone. But yeah, open concept offices, which I know we're all in a lot of times, have their benefits, but they also can be a really hard struggle for people to be able to get things done and concentrate, like big projects, tasks, and things like that. So you physically, sometimes you have to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go to Natasha. How do you deal with the new normal and all these extra pressures on you?
So first, I really just try to stay efficient as possible. Sometimes I find when I have a lot going on, I tend to procrastinate just to psych myself out of just not doing all things I have to do. But once I stay efficient, I know that I'm getting things done. Another thing is just setting goals, things that I can accomplish where I can get those weekly wins every week so I know that I'm working towards my goal and I'm accomplishing things, especially when I have a lot going on. And then for me, and this is probably a problem that many people have, but I have this Beyonce syndrome where I just want to be the queen of everything. I want to be able to do everything and I want to be perfect. And you have to let go of that perfection. You hear a lot of people say, successful people don't sleep, successful people don't eat, things like that. But you have to be ambitious, but be realistic at the same time. So that's probably the biggest thing for me. So those are my tips for that.
Yeah, I love that successful people don't sleep because they stay up and they get 2 hours or 3 hours of sleep and then they have Ambien and then they sorry guys, I've been thinking about how to work that in this whole presentation. How about Christina? Talk a little bit about, I know you've somewhat recently taken on a lot more responsibility, changed jobs, taken on a lot. How do you deal with it?
Yeah, for me, it was really a realization that this was the new normal rather than thinking it was a path to something else. In a very short amount of time, I was on, this was, my son was born. I was on maternity leave. I gave notice to my last job that I was leaving with my newborn baby in hand and the letter of resignation, and took that new job. Actually worked both of them at one point to try and keep them both happy, and was studying for the ASAE all in a very short amount of time. And I found myself so crazy that I couldn't even the story that I tell often is after the exam was over and the cloud, evaporated of all the newness that I had with, a second family member and a new job and really new responsibilities and all of that. I was at the zoo, where there's animals with my family and a friend. And I said to them, I go, I haven't been in public in a long time. I don't even know what to do here. Like, how do we act at the zoo? They all looked at me like I was crazy because I was like in this like autopilot mode of like function in work. And that was a realization to me that like it just was too much at one time. And looking back, would I have done anything differently? Probably not. But I know next time around, you know, realizing where I wasn't spending energy like with my family and my friends, and accepting that going forward rather than feeling regretful for it was helpful. Is I just know right now that I don't have a lot of time for friends, and that's okay. My really good friends are at work and I have that filled there. And the friends I really care about are also busy too. So that's fine. And there will be time for them when I choose to turn down the career burner and other places. And people say, oh, you're so successful here, there, everywhere. And I go, yes, but that's because I'm not successful in these places. Like I haven't had a friend's date in probably months. And they're like, oh, we feel bad. I go, I don't feel bad at all, because that comes at a risk and a reward. So kind of have to just decide what works for you and rock it and own it and be happy about it. And if it doesn't work, then change it up. Like, you're in control.
Yeah, that's great. I want to hear from Danny, and I'm actually really curious. So we've been talking about this new normal and how all these, added responsibilities and things that we're balancing and stuff. I'm curious to hear your perspective, particularly as somebody who works for a row organization, and how that might affect how you go about balancing your new normal.
So it's probably about the same. I mean, so ASCO is a results-oriented work environment, which basically ultimately means that the onus is on me to establish my own rhythm and my own productivity and things like that, which I feel like is what is the goal for most work environments anyway. But it provides more of that kind of, we have collective results and that kind of thing. So I think that I can echo a lot of what was said already about establishing boundaries and really owning your boundaries however they may be set up. But something that I find that is also a benefit and probably a secondary benefit to establishing those kind of boundaries and things is to take what your current workload is before you've adopted, or what your previous workload was. Now you've taken on all these new things, the jobs and responsibilities that you have done for years or for months and you do every day the same way. Look for efficiencies in them, things that you kind of take for granted. This is how I do this is the process. Take a step back and say, well, I've grown professionally, I can do my job better. So what these things, maybe there's ways that I can cut time and still achieve, the same level of productivity or the same results, things like that. It's a lot easier to kind of cut down the things you're really good at than try and do it to things that you're just starting to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good advice. So we've talked a lot about managing our time. We've talked a little bit about like actually disconnecting and taking a vacation and enjoying it, and to the extent that we can. And we've talked a little bit about the new normal that comes along with added responsibility at work, or things outside of work kind of taking more of the time than you expected. Let's take a few minutes. Let's talk about some resources that we use to better ourselves when it comes to balancing our work and our life and all of our other commitments. I'm going to start with Natasha. What are some of your favorite resources when it comes to life balance and self-care? Are there like podcasts or blogs or books in particular that you like?
So my resources is actually people. I like to learn from people. I have a lot of mentors I talk to. I have parents. I have friends. And if I could just share a story really quick. So I've been going through a lot lately within the past couple years, because just trying to find balance has been very difficult. So in the summer of 2017, I got engaged. That was an amazing time. And it was like, it's time to plan a wedding. But, a few months later, I got a puppy. Then I started a new job. Then I started grad school. Then I started the house buying process. So it was all these things being thrown at me at once. And I just had no idea how I was going to plan a wedding. And then the biggest thing is a lot of times we let the pressure of society, of where we need to be, of where our timelines need to be with getting things done, affect us. And that was like the biggest thing for me. So I think by me being able to talk it out with people, to figure out, is this normal? Like, should I be planning a wedding right now if I have a million things going on? Should I be focused on school? Should I be focused on this new job? That was like the biggest thing that, you know, was this big cloud over my head. But talking to people really helped me get through, letting me know that, you know, my decisions don't need to be validated by others, you know. So just having people in your corner, people in your background telling you, hey, this is normal, I got it, was something that just made it, you know, everything. So my resource are people.
Yeah, no, that's actually fantastic, because when we think about it, it's like, oh, who's like the great blog, who's the hot podcast right now, but we like tend to forget sometimes to like reach out to our network. And
Yes.
Pro tip, no, I was gonna make a joke about how like I didn't have to actually do anything to plan my wedding because my wife took care of it, but that's like definitely very stereotypes that I don't want to get into. I see Christina raising her hand. What's up, Christina?
Only because this example is relevant in that you make a good point about expectations of society. So I was married 5.5 years ago. And at that time, back when I was engaged, so 7 some years ago, I was a meeting planner. And, you know, one expects the meeting planners to plan their weddings. And generally, I was excited about that. But at the end of the day, I hated the details. I didn't care what the centerpieces were. I didn't care. There's very few things that I really wanted my hands on, because I'm making decisions about that every day in my work right now, talking to the hotels and the vendors. I could not do that when I got home. I literally outsourced. I'm not kidding you. I outsourced our centerpieces for our wedding to my husband. I said, I don't care what we do. You go, run with it. And they were great. They were fine. And in fact, they were wonderful. But I think it's important for you to decide where that line is for you and communicate that to the people who need to know about it. Because looking back on that, people think it's crazy that I was like, I really drew a line. I was like, I don't care where people are sitting. I don't care where the, you know, these things are. I was like, my husband, I was like, Aaron, you just do those things. They'll all be fine. But these are the things I want to be involved in, and everything worked out fine. Just know where your line is.
Yeah. Okay. So question for the group. I'm curious if anybody wants to share, was there a life event like getting married or having a child or starting a business or what have you? Was there a particular life event that totally changed your perspective on the work-life balance, that like made it easier for you to compartmentalize? Or maybe just me. I don't know. I felt like when I got married, this was naive at the time, that like, oh, now I'm married and now that's now the most important thing in my life. It's no longer work, right? It's no longer a career. Like now I have a partnership, I have a spouse. And then when my son was born, it's like, okay, now that's even more important. Like now that I have this thing that I have to like take care of. And it just made everything like at work just seem like less important. I don't know. Did anybody else have that experience? And
well, for me, I'm just saying that it kind of changes over time, right? So for me, like my career has been pretty important lately, but you know, it's also because of that, because I'm planning down the road to probably have another maternity leave down the road when we decide to have another child. And so I'm going to be putting that on pause at some point. And so I'm kind of building all of that up now so that when I do that, I can enjoy it then. And the realization for me is constantly been shifting. You know, it wasn't the house, it really wasn't the wedding, but to me it was getting that career, that new job that I've been working really hard for, and having it in front of me and then not wanting to screw it up. Is kind of like that realization. And now that you're there and you've had some time in it, in that newness, that new normal, it's like, okay, what's that next thing? Whether it be family, friends, health, or career, and kind of exploring what that new thing you're going to work to achieve will be.
Yeah, definitely. So let's hear from Danny. I'm curious, what are some of the resources that you turn to when you're figuring out balance and self-care?
So I think a lot of it, when I'm trying to figure out ways to kind of take care of myself. It's again finding those pockets of joy, you know, really falling back on, all right, what are the things that I can identify that I know are going to be, you know, stress reducers? You know, that like the things like, you know, making sure to build time for that kind of stuff. I think that there are a lot of resources to kind of be able to help you kind of self-identify those kind of things. You know, a lot of there's a website called mindtools.com. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with that, but there's a lot of really great resources on there about stress management and about just kind of all sorts of career development kind of blogs and articles and things like that. That's super helpful. I'd also recommend, and this is might just be for you know me and for ASCO and things, but take advantage of any professional or career development that your HR departments may offer. You know, depending upon what your organization, how big or how small, you know, if there are opportunities there that are, you know, career development, career planning, professional development, ASCO has a mentoring program that I've done that's been, you know, things like that. If they're available to you, jump on them. They are super helpful. They definitely have helped me plan my career, and they're an easy resource because you can literally do them at work. And so if they're available to you, that's something that's like a very, very good resource for me, and I would encourage you to take advantage of them.
Yeah. So can you say that again? It was Mind
Tools, MINDTOOLS, mindtools.com.
Yeah, that's great. And for people who may be watching this later, I would encourage you to start a thread on Collaborate of some like really great podcasts or books or resources or TED Talks that you turn to when you're trying to work through some of these issues. Caitlin, how about you? What are some resources that you might turn to? You're on. Oh, you got a baby.
Oh, no, I'm back. It was perfect timing, right as I was about to hand him off. I think for me, a lot comes down to I don't find a lot of like tips and tricks work for me. I think for me, it's just like self-prioritization, self-reflection, understanding that, like I've said this earlier, that like, you know, as you go through your different stages of life, I mean, when I remember when I first started out like working as a young professional, I didn't mind working late. You know, if I left the office and it was dark out, it didn't bother me. Now, if I do that, it's kind of a deal breaker, because I really prioritize my time at home to be home for like bedtime and things like that. But I don't mind getting on, you know, after bedtime and knocking some emails out or doing whatever I need to do. So I think it's, to me, the tip would be just to continually self-reflect, figure out what your priorities are and what your deal breakers are. And as you go through every stage of your career and your personal life, really evaluate what situations you're putting yourself in and if they're going to conflict with your priorities. And especially as I know for like my job that I'm currently in now, you know, we have night conference calls. I'm a medical association, and our physicians just can't do day conference calls. Their schedules don't allow for it. So we have night conference calls. And I knew that going into it. I didn't know as my career advanced how many more I would get as I kind of moved up, and how they continually add to my calendar. But I think it's important that when you're kind of evaluating your career, that you figure out what those deal breakers are. And if the position you're looking at doesn't work with those, you know, maybe it's not the best position for you, but prioritizing, you know, having that list of like, what are your top 3 priorities right now in my current phase of life, and making sure that those kind of work with my job and my personal life. Doesn't really answer your question. I don't necessarily have any tips or tricks. I think my biggest tip to all the people watching would be continually reflect on your life and the lifestyle you want to live, both inside the office and outside the office. And that can change, and that's okay. And continue to work hard.
Yeah, I mean, that's just great advice. Like sometimes, you know, there's no one good resource that's going to be like a total epiphany or a game changer. Like we all pick up little things from each other and articles that we see that come out and podcasts that our friends tell us about. I'm going to use this opportunity to make a shameless plug for the ASAE Young Professionals community, which I assume a lot of people that are either watching this now or will watch it later will have heard of it through that community. And taking advantage of a lot of the resources and the network that you can build that way is just immensely beneficial, and particularly the next gen discussions, conversations that happen at ASAE events in which the committee will line up an executive to speak with a group of younger professionals about how they dealt with a lot of these issues as they were coming up, and being able to hear it from somebody who did it 20, 30 years ago. Sorry, I didn't mean to age anybody. It's just really, really helpful. And I'm thinking in particular of a session we did a couple of years ago with Cynthia Mills, in which she encouraged us to think about our lives, in particular our career, and like 15-year blocks, right? You're gonna, from like 25 to 40, you're gonna have certain work and life goals that are gonna be different than those that you have from 40 to 55, and being intentional about like planning that out, even if it's just like a loose timeline. If it's a loose schedule, it doesn't have to be specific, it doesn't have to be detailed. That can be just really helpful. We have a few minutes left, and I have, I just want to bum rush the panel with a question I just thought of, but I'm curious, and anybody jump in if you have something you wish to add, but how might you balance success in one part of your life, say something really great happened at work, with something bad that you did, or not bad, like a failure or a missed opportunity in another part of your life? And the example I'm going to use is I had a board meeting this last February in which we had a really great meeting, and we moved our agenda, and we had really great conversations. And as we're celebrating that, I get a video text from my wife that my child has had his first steps. And so I missed on that. So I'm like compartmentalizing, like, okay, well, that's not a big deal, I missed it because I have this success here. So I'm curious from others, like, have you had that? Have you had to balance positive or successes in one area, one burner of your life, while dealing with missed opportunities or potential failures in other burners of your life? Maybe it's just me, I don't know, I'm curious.
I can go quick. So there's one very specific example that I can always think of, and I knew it was a decision like right in front of me and that I was going to miss something. So unlike Paul's story, he didn't know he was going to miss on his child walking, but I knew there was a decision for me. I had to pick between two important things. And unfortunately, they were the only two burners I had on, was my family and my career. And I had to literally choose between the two. So the short story is that about 2.5 years ago, I had a family member that became severely ill and essentially was paralyzed, and eventually was able to regain strength and learn to walk again over like 9 months. This is like my mom. And this is happening at the same time that I'm negotiating a potential career change. And there was an event that I had been accepted to attend. And it was an exclusive event. There was only like 20 some people going. I knew that going to that event would mean I would meet the people I needed to meet to probably advance that career step for me. But that event was the one day that my mom had scheduled her first like walk, like a 5K walk with our whole extended family. I mean, like aunts and uncles and friends and the nurses and the doctors. Like, this is a really big deal. So I had to choose between going to this event that I had been like exclusively like, accepted to for work, or go to that run and support my mom, who'd been spending the last 9 months of her life fighting to be able to walk again. And so I sat there like, this is gonna be tough. I'm gonna disappoint somebody. So I talked with my mom about it. I told her I wanted to choose the work thing because I knew what that was gonna mean for me. And then I got permission from her to essentially not do that. And then I had to like go through all the family members and tell them why I wasn't there. It was a big thing. And ultimately what I did was I happened to be traveling the same day back from the conference while they were all on the walk. So I did like a 5K at the airport because I felt helpless. But it was really about communication in advance, knowing I was going to upset somebody and feel a failure in one of those two. And it all worked out for the end. It was great, but man, that was tough knowing I'd have to choose.
Christina's hard to follow up with that example. As you were talking, I was like, well, mine doesn't seem as important, but I know for me, last year, my big kind of professional development goal that I set for myself was just starting to branch out more and accept and put my name out there more for more professional development speaking opportunities. So I spoke 2 years ago now at ASAE's annual meeting, which for me is really outside my comfort zone. And then a year ago, when my daughter was about 6 months old, I spoke at ASAE, which is the Association for Medical Association Staff. And it was my first time, being apart from my daughter for work travel. And it was something that I voluntarily agreed to do. And as it was approaching, I agreed to do it. And we submitted our proposal, I think, when I was on maternity leave. It's a long process from submitting proposals to actually going to speak. And as it kind of got closer and closer and the months ticked by, I was having this just such internal struggle trying to be why did I agree to this? It's it's something I was voluntary. Why did I throw my hat in the ring? And it was really a hard transition for me to kind of allow myself to be okay with, being away from my daughter and, voluntarily going to do something that was going to benefit myself personally. Especially something that was so hard for me in terms of it wasn't something I was necessarily good at. I was working on, and to do something like that where I was, leaving my family for the weekend, and then compounded, of course, my flight got canceled coming home, and I just felt terrible, that I was away from my daughter in the meantime, and then I was longer than I intended to be. But I think, like I said, it's hard to follow up with Christina's example, but I think, it's tricky to put yourself out there and do things sometimes to make yourself grow and be a better professional. But also I like to remind myself that on my personal life, the example I'm leading for my daughter, working hard and kind of continuing to grow myself personally and professionally. So that would be my personal example.
Yeah, that's great. How about Danny and Natasha? Anything you want to add to that?
So I have a real quick comment. Just gonna piggyback on Christina's story and just say that being proactive about making those decisions instead of putting them off makes the disappointment a lot easier to handle. So having that conversation with your mom earlier, I'm sure was a lot easier of a pill to swallow than doing it the night before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I just say I'm just learning from all of this. Some of the things that you all have been through is really an eye opener for me. I'm very, early in my career. So just hearing this feedback and just being a part of this call has just been awesome. This is a learning experience for me.
We call that lateral mentoring. We're learning from each other.
I love that term. I use that often.
I mean, you basically coined it. So we've reached the top of the hour. This has been just a fantastic conversation with really a lot of great takeaways. Since we have 1 minute left, I just want to give our panelists just one last, if they have any closing remarks, it's okay if you don't, but if you had any final nuggets of wisdom you wanted to share with the group before we break.
I think I'll just leave with this, which is, even when you think your situation is tough, there's always someone that's got it from your perception tougher. So that was a difficult, example for me to live through, but there are all these other examples I have of people that I'm oh my God, I'm glad that wasn't my decision. So I think it's all perspective, and what's busy for you is totally acceptable to be busy for you. Maybe you don't have kids in a house and a dog and a spouse and a blah, 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 but maybe you have 7 side hustles, or maybe you have a volunteer role that you are putting a lot of your passion into, and that's fine too. These are all just examples. So I guess what I'm leaving with is just think about your own normal and your own things, and how the grass is really always greener on someone else's side.
Yeah, I was going to say my parting wisdom would be that balance is personal, and what is balance for you might not be what balance is for someone else. And I know, especially in this day and age, it's so easy to like be like, you know, they're doing it all and they have the perfect balance. But I think you really have to I kind of being the dead horse here on this, but like you really truly have to reflect on what balance means to you and how to prioritize. And that's the only way you're going to be happy, is if you can really figure out what that perfect combination is for you, and really truly just run with it, because it's what no one can tell you exactly how to balance your life. That it has to be something that you determine yourself.
Yeah, and I would say that's really not always the easiest thing to do, especially when if you feel like you're drowning. So if you are feeling like you're drowning, it's so important to step outside of your situation and kind of approach it with that rational thought of like, how do I balance? Like, just step away from the stress for a second and say, okay, here's my situation. Where is my room? Where's my room for growth? Where's my room to balance?
Yeah, and it's all about just putting yourself first and not being guilty for taking a day off, not being guilty for asking for help. If you're not good, no one else can be good around you. So think about yourself first.
Yeah, that hit it right on the head, because my closing remarks were going to be self-care, take it seriously, put energy and effort into it, you know, make sure you're eating right, make sure you're staying active, make sure you're reading and keeping your brain active, and make sure that you're keeping up with the very most important relationships that you have in your life, whether it's your family or your friends or your mentors. Just like, make sure that you're being the best you that you can be, right? So again, I wanted to thank the panelists. We had a lot of really great ideas that came up today, and some really great takeaways. I'm sure we'll have another Drinks and Discover sometime soon. I'm sorry I don't have the schedule in front of me, but for those watching this later, definitely engage with the ASAE Young Professionals Committee, community, and join the committee, actually, if you're interested. But stay engaged in the community. There are a lot of really great people that will help you. And with that, I would bid you all adieu.